The American Dream, Redlining, and the Lasting Impact of Housing Discrimination. The American Dream returns. When World War II ended in 1945, nearly 15 million American servicemen and women began returning home. Unlike many veterans of earlier wars, these returning GIs were greeted with one of the most significant benefit programs in American history, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, better known as the GI Bill. The GI Bill helped veterans attend college, receive vocational training, obtain unemployment benefits, and purchase homes using government-backed mortgages with little or no down payment. The law transformed America. It helped create what many historians describe as the modern American middle class, and fueled one of the greatest periods of homeownership in our nation's history. The rise of the American suburb. Demand for housing exploded after the war. Builders responded by creating entirely new suburban communities. Perhaps no development became more famous than Levittown, New York. Beginning in 1947, Levitt & Sons introduced assembly line construction techniques that dramatically reduced the cost of building homes. At peak production, a new house was completed approximately every 16 minutes. For thousands of veterans, homeownership suddenly became an achievable dream. Unfortunately, that dream was not equally available to everyone. Housing opportunities were not equal. Although the GI Bill itself did not restrict benefits based on race, many veterans experienced unequal access because mortgage lending, local housing policies, real estate practices, and community restrictions frequently discriminated against minority applicants. Many African American veterans who had served their country honorably returned home only to discover they faced tremendous obstacles obtaining mortgage financing or purchasing homes in many communities. This unequal access contributed to lasting disparities in homeownership that continued for generations. Redlining and restrictive covenants. During this same period, discriminatory lending practices became widespread. Government-sponsored lending maps often labeled minority neighborhoods as high-risk investment areas. This practice became known as redlining because neighborhoods were frequently outlined in red on lending maps. Properties located within those areas often became ineligible for federally backed mortgage financing, regardless of the individual buyer's financial qualifications. Many subdivisions also included racially restrictive covenants recorded in property deeds that attempted to prohibit ownership or occupancy by certain racial, ethnic, or religious groups. Today, these restrictions are illegal and unenforceable, but copies of the original recorded documents may still exist in historical title records. One of the landmark cases addressing these restrictions was Shelley v. Kramer, 1948, in which the United States Supreme Court held that courts could not enforce racially restrictive covenants. Although discriminatory language often remained in recorded documents for decades afterward, it no longer carried legal force. These events became major catalysts for the eventual passage of the Fair Housing Act 20 years later. An Arizona perspective. Many longtime Arizona real estate professionals remember receiving large printed title packages that included decades of recorded documents. Occasionally, those historical records contained discriminatory deed restrictions that had been recorded long before fair housing laws existed. Today, those provisions are legally unenforceable, and many counties and title companies have worked to identify or remove discriminatory language where state law permits. Although these historical documents no longer determine who may own property, they serve as important reminders of why fair housing protections became necessary. The realtor commitment. The real estate profession has continued to evolve. Today, realtors voluntarily commit themselves to providing equal professional service to every consumer. That commitment extends beyond merely complying with the law. It includes providing equal professional service, remaining informed about fair housing laws, creating advertising that welcomes everyone, educating consumers about their fair housing rights, refusing to tolerate unlawful discrimination, promoting equal housing opportunities throughout the community. These commitments reflect both the letter and the spirit of fair housing. Why this history still matters. Many of today's fair housing laws exist because of the housing practices you've learned about in this chapter. Understanding those events helps explain why federal agencies, state regulators, courts, brokers, and realtors continue to place such importance on equal housing opportunity. As Arizona real estate professionals, we cannot change history, but we can ensure every client receives the same professional service, respect, and opportunity today. Broker tip. Every conversation, showing, advertisement, and transaction should be guided by one question. Would I handle this situation exactly the same way if this client were someone else? If the answer is yes, You're building one of the strongest fair housing compliance habits possible. Online discussion question: why did the GI Bill have such a significant impact on American homeownership after World War II? Answer: the GI Bill provided veterans with affordable government-backed mortgage financing, making homeownership possible for millions of returning service members and helping create the modern American middle class. How did redlining contribute to long-term housing inequality? Answer: redlining restricted mortgage financing in many minority neighborhoods, limiting opportunities for homeownership and wealth creation for generations of families. Question: why is it important for today's licensees to understand historical deed restrictions even though they are unenforceable? Answer: understanding these historical practices helps explain why fair housing laws exist today and reinforces the importance of providing equal professional service to every consumer.